As you reflect back on year one, are there lessons you're walking away with from that experience?
Yeah, there was. I think part of it was a matter of political will, of being able to say this is a priority and we're going to stand in the gap and do that. You know, the previous record for Denver was we had spent about 3 years to try to approve one tiny home village, which housed about 40 individuals. That took lawsuits, it took public battles, and after 3 years we had 40 units. Our path was instead to bring on 1,000 units in 90 days, which meant hence the 60 town halls in every community with a very much less nice crowds than this one with very angry things to share with me. But we took that feedback, we modified our plan, and we didn't step away. And the result was we were able to stand up 1,000 units. I've gone back to all those communities for follow-up town halls, and there's about 10 people that show up now because they feel quite good about how it's turned out. And so, and I think that was the hardest conversation first, bringing folks who are currently on the streets and maybe struggling with addiction or mental health into your community can be a tough conversation. We've guaranteed security and success at those sites. We think that sets us up for much easier conversations. You know, you all that do affordable housing development know you have some of those same hard conversations when you want to come to a neighborhood and say we're going to build affordable housing. You think it's hard trying to convince someone to have a nurse in their neighborhood, talking about trying to have someone who's recovering from 20 years of addiction in their neighborhood. And so we think we've changed the conversation to be one about how do we get access to housing for everybody, knowing that's better for the current residents and for the folks that are unhoused. So I think what I have learned and I've been affirmed by is people want you to build high-quality products that provide high-quality services. They're scared because they've seen us fail at that before. If you think through those hard problems and deliver solutions that work and stay at it, people actually come around quite quickly. And so some of the people that were the strongest opponents of these efforts when we approved them were there on opening day when we cut ribbons and opened tiny homes and opened hotel sites to be a part of the solution. So I think there is a real desire for this to work if we can answer the fair questions they have about safety and stability and funding.
Yeah. And just in terms of thinking of the trajectory of your work, but you've been talking to lots of other mayors from other cities, and for every high-growth city in the United States, it's generally a common theme that housing's become exceptionally a crisis mode right now. And whatever we're trying to do as a development community or as financiers is not sufficient enough, and neither is the efforts by the state or the city. And so sometimes it feels daunting and unsolvable. And you've taken on the challenge of saying that you want to really attack it full on. What do you think Denver could be doing differently, or what's your vision here in terms of why Denver's story might be different from what's happening elsewhere?
Yeah, I think we have two jointly held theories. I think people sometimes believe either you are a market rate development advocate and that is your strategy, or you are an affordable unit development advocate and that is your strategy, but never the twain shall meet. And it turns out our belief is yes and yes. Actually, what you want to do to increase affordability is to increase supply at every income level. And we have, you all probably know this, but there's a frame called the moving chain index, which looks at city by city. If you build a market rate unit, what is the net impact on the number of affordable units that are created from that market rate unit? Said another way, if you create a market rate unit and someone moves into it, does that mean they moved out of a more affordable unit that now becomes available to someone who needs it? Denver has among the highest moving chain indexes of any city. It's 0.82, which means for every market rate unit we build, we create 0.82 affordable units because of the moving chain impact. So that means we want to do both. We're both working on reforming our permitting and our zoning processes to make it much easier to build in Denver. We want this to be the easiest city to build in, not what can be historically one of the toughest cities to build in. And the second is we are really prioritizing a strategy on how we can partner with the private sector to build affordable housing, not fight against them. So a lot of the tools that we built in Prop 123 and the ones that we're working on now at the city are about how can we make it easier for you to fill the gaps in financing you have to make projects pencil so that you can naturally build units that will remain affordable without having to lose money. And so we view that as a partnership between public sector and private sector, not as a battle. There's no way the city's ever going to build the amount of supply we need here on our own. All we can do is create the right preconditions for you all to be able to do that, including permitting, zoning, financing. And so we think if we set really big goals, we're willing to spend all the political capital we need to back the notion that this city is better off with more housing supply and more density, not less, and the ability to put financing and coalitions behind that, we think puts us in a position to really win. I think 2 or 3 years ago, kind of that felt like the NIMBYs were winning in this city, right? People's resistance to building was outweighing the sense of what could we do if we actually brought on more units. Now I think we have a coalition of civil rights groups, of nonprofit allies, of business partners who all see it as if you do not have a city where your teachers and nurses and firefighters can afford to live, That means they are commuting 40 minutes to get here. That means you got worse traffic, you have worse climate impact, you have less happy customers. And so we think this is a win-win, and we're willing to put a lot of energy behind it.
And is your hypothesis there that even creating more market rate supply really eases the pressure in terms of the unit supply that's available and creates more space for affordable unit supply to come online? Because the counter argument that we keep hearing is that market rate is the reason why our cities are becoming unaffordable, that we take the existing resources, land and financing, and build units that are deeply unaffordable for communities that can't afford to pay the rent that they need to pay. I don't know, how do you counter that? Because I know that you see a lot of opposition from the traditional community of affordable housing advocates, but also folks in community about the fact that, no, you really need to go down the AMI chain to make this work.
Yeah, our theory is you have to do both. You definitely have to intentionally structure deals to be able to bring on affordable units at 30% of AMI. That will not happen naturally without our intervention or our pushing. You have to do the same at 60 and at 80. But yeah, the more 90 and 100 and 120% of AMI units that come onto the market without a lot of our intervention or financing support, that does help open up capacity that we think matters. And so we're going to intently focus on the places where the market will not solve it itself, like those deeply affordable units. Even that we're going to do in partnership with the private sector because we can't do it alone. But I do think it can be a both and, as long as we're mindful of how we really preserve space and access for affordability. And I think our goal, like many of yours, is that these units can be seamlessly integrated into the rest of the development that we're doing. That you can have mixed income units where you're going to have on the same site with the same finishings, units that are market rate and units that are somewhat subsidized and units that are heavily subsidized. And that is Denver, that distribution. When we think about downtown, we want downtown to be not just a central business district, but a central neighborhood district, a place where people live every day. And that means not just luxury units, but we want folks that are servers at your favorite restaurant and bar downtown to also be able to live downtown. To do that, you have to have that kind of mixed income development throughout the neighborhoods of the city, including downtown.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about then the thing you already teased, which is around zoning and permitting. Maybe we can tackle it separately. Let's start with zoning. You've done these community meetings, and people are very favorable of housing in general, unless it's in my neighborhood, right? So I'm very excited about affordable housing. The city in general is in favor of it, but when it comes down to people's their own neighborhoods, you see a significant amount of opposition. I know the state just passed a whole bunch of legislation focused on density as well as transit-oriented development. I don't know how you are thinking about it in terms of both changing the mindset and the narratives of your voters, and where do citizens land in terms of the overall opposition for any kind of density in their own communities, especially in communities where historically we haven't seen any kind of multifamily development? Yeah,
I think we are seeing more density, obviously, even in some of our highest rent neighborhoods. There's a lot of density in Cherry Creek right now. And people love that experience of density and walkable, livable business, retail, shopping, restaurants. And so I think what we want to do is have a plan that says, yes, we want to add units, we want to add volume, and that means density. And that also means density in all of our neighborhoods, because you'll have the same challenge of people will say, gosh, there's a huge labor supply challenge in Cherry Creek, and it's hard to get workers into Cherry Creek. And so we're trying to figure out how to solve a complex transportation problem to get folks from West Denver into Cherry Creek to work a shift at a restaurant every day. Or you could actually have affordable units in Cherry Creek, and the folks could live there and work there at the same time. And so I think what we want to do is say there should be a plan on affordability. It should be true across all of our council districts, so we're not building them in one section of town. And they should be mixed income by design. I think when people have resistance to multifamily, they're thinking of the affordable housing projects of the 1970s. They're thinking of Cabrini Green or something as the strategy, as opposed to how do you think about what density can look like that still has quality and has diversity of income and can exist in multiple stages. Doesn't have to be 20 stories in every location, can be 4. But we think there is, I live in Central Park. There's almost 1,000 units of new housing that have come up just on Central Park Boulevard in the last probably 12 to 16 months. That adds great economic vitality, and it's all transit-oriented. It's right next to light rail. So we think the transit-oriented aspect gives us a real opportunity, particularly with the bus rapid transit that'll be coming all across Colfax. It's a big opportunity for density all along Colfax. So we will push for density in all of our neighborhoods in a way that the neighborhoods can both feel fits with their identity, but also has them have a hand in the solution.
Mm-hmm. And do you anticipate kind of foreseeing any zoning or regulation changes that you would push for in that context, or something that comes to mind in terms of how you think about? Yeah.
We think we have a good path to do density around the city with some of our, I mean, there will always be places where we'll want to upzone to be able to add for more density, and we're open to that. I think our first corridors will be the transit-based corridors where we think we have a lot more density to add to make actually those transit corridors work.
Yeah.
We need to add ridership on our light rail also, and so it also helps. Some people say the light rail doesn't feel safe right now, I won't use it enough. Well, the best way to make a light rail train safe is to make it full. Like that is the safest light rail you ride on. The most dangerous light rail is you and one random dude you don't know on the light rail by yourself is what you don't want. And so this is why I think this helps our transit plan, helps our climate impact, and helps our affordability. So we're really going to focus along those corridors for density, but those corridors cover a lot, great parts of the city when you add bus lines and light rail lines. And we think that gives us a head start. We know not every neighborhood is going to have 5-story developments in the middle of them, but we do think they can have them in ways that are balanced to give people access.
Yeah, I realized we're looking out at a light rail stop as we talk, and then there's a parking lot that's mostly empty, but probably one of the largest places of space where you could build stuff, right?
Yes.
This is a great example of where we are, but also there's a bunch of density here, but it's a fair point.
You can also help me in my other mission, which is to eliminate every surface parking lot in downtown Denver. I will put that also on the list of things that should no longer be true.
Park. Let's talk about permitting too, and I think that would be really relevant for this audience. It's deeply frustrating to get something through. And I know now you've got new leadership, and you talked about during your campaign at CPD, which is the Community Planning and Development. How do you think about reimagining that process, especially for developers who are spending a significant amount of resources in getting a project online and then are stuck somewhere in the pipeline in not being able to get them permitted and get them up and running? So what's your vision there?
Yeah. This is a really important one for us. We actually made this one of our 7 top citywide goals for the year is transforming the permitting process. And so we've set an immediate goal for this year, which is cutting the permitting process by 30% in year 1. I'm happy to tell you that actually in our first 6 months of the year, we are already on path right now at a 30% faster permitting time than we've been before. I was just looking at some data this morning, but we're about 35% reduction in SDP timelines right now. We have a 20% increase in the percent of building and zoning permit reviews that are completed on time. And we have a 50% reduction in the number of times, the number of days past due for projects that are late. And so we're tracking all of those day to day, week to week, and making some big changes like consolidating the number of permits, so you only have to draw 1 permit instead of 2 permits if you're going to do a house and an attached garage. We've raised the levels. We've sort of adjusted for inflation, the cost of the projects that require certain levels of permits, and so we have about 30% of the commercial permits we will drop from a 10-day permit to a 2-day permit based on their increased eligibility, so that accelerates by 80% a lot of those permitting times. So we're doing a lot of small incremental changes right now as fast as we can to make the experience better. At the same time, we are working on just blowing up the entire system and figuring out how to rebuild a permitting system that's going to be built for the 21st century and will be much easier to use and to navigate. And so if you have ideas or input for that, we have a multidisciplinary team and a board of outside advisors helping us think about how to do a transformational redesign that we think will make this much easier to navigate. But in the immediate term, we want to make sure the experience is better every single day. And so we are tracking daily, I see weekly, every single permit timeline so that we can make this, again, the easiest place to work and not the hardest. I talk to too many people who will say, you know what, I stopped building in Denver. I gave up. I do projects in Aurora. I do them in Lakewood. I don't do Denver anymore. And that is a death knell for our city. That can't be true. And so and I would say that also includes, which I shared with Santhosh, that also includes the culture of the city in terms of how we approach developers, which is, I think, it has felt previously like the mean school teacher with the red marker who took great pride in trying to mark up your page as violently as possible, as opposed to a partner who wants to see you succeed, is grateful for what you want to build to add vibrance and life to the city, and wants to accelerate your impact in getting it done. And so that was why we needed a change in leadership. Manish, who we just brought in as our new head of CPD, has literally transformed and rebuilt permitting and zoning systems in countries around the world, including Haiti and Ukraine and Israel, and so has both been part of the State Department effort on this and is someone who's not afraid to move quickly and fast to get big things done. So we're very excited about that progress, and you should see dramatic changes this year and in the years ahead.
That's great. Should we flash your cell phone number here in case anything?
Yeah, exactly.
So that you can call the mayor
call
in case
Manish.
the 50 days is not is not met. And then on the financing side, Mayor, I think you're kind of facing a little bit of a crisis because the city really ramped up the funding for affordable housing through ARPA dollars. And those dollars are going to wind down in the next 12 to 18 months. And there's going to be a huge challenge in terms of continuing the momentum of the work you all have been doing. How do you think about tackling that? What is your vision for it? And how is that going to affect in terms of the development community as well as the creating new supply?
Yeah, I do think revenue really matters on this, which will probably seem obvious to you, but I'm going to state this directly, which is the city's done about 1,500 units of affordable housing a year previously. We're on path to try to do 3,000 this year, but we're doing that with an extra $100 million of federal funding that will disappear this year. So our budget of $250 million in 2024 will drop to $150 million in 2025. It's a $100 million gap from where we are now. And our goal is to get from 3,000 units to 5,000 units a year. So we need to still accelerate the pipeline of what we're at now with less money. That's problematic. The reason why it matters is what I think you will find is cities make very bad policy decisions when you're trying to solve affordable housing with no resources to put on the table. What you get in that situation are unfunded mandates. What you get is our ability, as people say to developers, hey, you know what? You find a way to make 30% of your units affordable without a public dollar. And as you know, deals stop penciling when that happens. So the reason why we think we're going to need resources to solve this is what we want to do is to be good partners to the private sector, which means understand what your cost structure is, understand what the gap finance is that's needed, understand what the debt financing or the concessionary equity investing that is going to make a difference to make a deal pencil at affordability. We think we have to have those dollars to make it work and for it to work for you and for us. And so we're going to look at creative ways to do that, and we'll probably come back to the voters if we think there's a way to do that at the ballot, if it's not something that we can do through the general fund. But we think that is the only way to have a really collaborative public-private partnership on solving this, is to make sure we're invested and supportive of the work that you're doing and that you're invested and supportive of the work that we're doing. So we want to live up to that, and we will figure out a way to get that done.
Yeah, and that sounds like more of a sustainable long-term solution too, because I think it's honoring the work of developers who by the end of the day are the ones creating all the supply that we need. So you can't really put the burden on them to solve for it on behalf of the city.
And a good example of this is, we're looking at commercial to residential conversion in places like downtown where that's an opportunity for us. The price point on a unit conversion in downtown is quite high right now. It might be $500,000, $450,000 a unit to be able to convert them. You could do that if we let the market do it by itself. There's no way you can do that and make that unit affordable at the end after you pay that price point to do it. And so we have two choices. Either let the market convert downtown commercial to residential, and it will be entirely out of reach for any server or retail worker or teacher who wants to live in downtown, or have us partner with you to find a strategy to do that where it can actually be converted and can be affordable. We think that's a win-win for you and for us and for the city. That's why we did just announce about 3 weeks ago the largest investment in downtown in Denver's history, which is we have committed to putting $500 million over the next 10 years into the redevelopment of downtown through this Downtown Denver Authority without increasing taxes. It's a tax increment financing structure that was built for the construction of Union Station. That was on a 30-year payback structure. The returns have been so overwhelmingly positive at Union Station, it paid back that entire infrastructure cost in 15 years, not 30. So we will extend the next 15 years of that Downtown Denver Authority, but we'll expand the footprint from what previously financed just Union Station to now finance improvements in the entire central business district. So that's now, instead of 4 square blocks, 800 square blocks of downtown. And so we are going to put real dollars on the table to partner with you on this. And the goal is this downtown is the economic center of not just the city and the state, but really of a 15-state region. It's the biggest economic driver between Chicago and LA. And we want to make sure it is thriving and vibrant and the best destination to live, work, and play. And we're going to need investments to do that. So we're doing that already in downtown. We want to plan to do that for the rest of the city, which is what we'll work on now.
That's incredible. Switching gears a little bit, one of the things that we've noticed is that the fabric of the city is changing quite a bit, and especially for communities of color. I think Denver used to be a place where you could still afford to live, and we had vibrant black and brown neighborhoods. But increasingly, you see them moving out to Adams County, Aurora, neighboring suburbs, because it's far more affordable to buy a home or rent a home in those communities. How do you think of that? How does it affect our values as a city, one? And two, how do you kind of protect those communities and prevent the tide of displacement, and what's your vision for that?
Good question. Here's a stark example for you. So we have 13,000 employees at the city and county of Denver. I have 27 cabinet members who are agency heads that run those 13,000 employees. They're the highest ranking officials in the city. When you become mayor, you have to assign a deputy mayor, which is one of those 27 cabinet heads has to be able to stand in if I'm out of town for the day. And I went to pick someone for deputy mayor, and they came back and said, oh, sorry, one requirement in charter for the deputy mayor is they have to live in Denver. Of my 27 cabinet heads, 3 live in the city and county of Denver. because the 27 of them have been coming up through the ranks of civil service for the last 10, 15 years. They couldn't buy a home in Denver 5 or 10 years ago. If the single most senior employees in the city and county of Denver can't afford to live in the city and county of Denver, what do you think our line human service worker is doing, or our line officer or firefighter? That is an unsustainable path. And most disproportionately affects our entry-level employees that are most disproportionately women and people of color. So this is, we think, a really important tide we have to turn. Obviously, Santhosh, you and I work together on this. The good news is there are strategies that work to do this. And when we look specifically at the histories of discrimination and access to the housing market, there are ways to cure those. The one that we built as a model of this was around black home ownership in Denver. When you look at right now, the wealth gap in Colorado between white families and black families with young kids, so if you're talking about families with young kids, that wealth gap in Colorado is 100 to 1. 100 to 1. White families have about $150,000 of wealth built. Black families have about $1,500 of wealth built. And all 150,000 of that for white families comes from home ownership. It's because you own a home. And when you chase that down, what you find it is not that families, black families don't have the credit or the income. It is that of all those families that are credit eligible and income eligible for a home, more than 90% of them never get a mortgage because they can't make the down payment. When you have generations of deprivation of the ability to build and pass on wealth, not surprising you don't have $50K hanging around in your bank account when you want to make a down payment. So we launched a fund called the Deerfield Fund, Santhosh and I together, which is a down payment assistance program directly targeting black and African-American families to help them make that down payment so that they can get into a home and stay in that home. What you find is you can actually close the entire wealth gap for a family in like 7 years. Wealth gap 400 years in the making, you can close in almost 7 years with the investment to get someone into a home. And when they ever, so we put about $50,000 into a down payment assistance, the same way if your aunt or your uncle gave you that when you bought your first home. And whenever you refinance or sell that home, you just pay it back to the fund plus a handful of percentage points, and we pay it on to the next family. You just roll it over. But what you can do with these tools is create really powerful opportunities to help people get what they have the capacity to pay for. They have the income and the credit to earn a home. They just don't have the down payment to get into that home. Once they get there, they build wealth, they pass it on, they stay in neighborhoods. So we think there are intentional, creative strategies we can use to close the wealth gap and also add more ownership and more accessibility of housing here. We just have to be deliberate about understanding where the gaps are, where they've come from, and how you close them. But we think these are actually solvable problems. Santhosh and I play with the numbers. It is something like, you know better than I would, it's something like at a $200 million revolving loan fund, you could close the entire black wealth gap in the state of Colorado. And that's a stunning reality to believe that that's actually a solvable problem that seems impossible, that no state's ever approached, that you could do simply by using homeownership as a tool. That is why we know ownership transforms families' lives, and we know we could do it here.
Yeah, and I think it's also incredibly powerful that a 30-year mortgage is still the most effective affordability tool that families have, because you lock in your rates and you're good to go. And it's great for the supply community because I think you're creating a lot more demand for unlocking the percentage of people who could become homeowners who are not right now stifled from doing that, right? So I think it's a great vision. Well, I would love to step back a little bit. The panel's title, Housing's Role in Becoming the Best. And I know if there's any mayor in the country I would ask that question, it's you. So I think you're holding a significantly large vision for what housing could be in Denver. And I want to ask you in a closing thought in terms of what's your vision for that in terms of next 5 to 10 years? Where do you see us as a city in terms of our housing ecosystem and particularly around affordability? And what's your vision there?
Thank you. I want Denver to be the first city that solves this puzzle, which is right now you have cities on two trajectories. Either they're becoming more affordable because fewer people want to live there or move there. They have fewer jobs and fewer growth, and the market is very low. And I could name you 10 cities you're thinking of that fit in that category. And the other option is you have cities that are seeing great economic booms, that are growing and thriving and adding commercial capacity and becoming rapidly unaffordable. Right? Input San Francisco as your case in point. The goal is, can we be the first one to actually be neither of those? Can we be the city that is the fastest growing economic engine in the country, but is deliberate and thoughtful and creative enough around financing to be proactive about affordability, so we are the fastest growing economic center in the country and still the place where the second grade teacher that greets your daughter when you drop her off in the morning and gives her a giant hug and picks her up can still live in the neighborhood where she teaches? If you can solve that problem, if you can get ahead of the curve on affordability, that means more employers want to grow here and build here because their employees can afford to live here. It means your core public servants can afford to live in the city that they work, which means it saves you traffic and transit and climate impact. And it means you have a quality of life of a wonderfully diverse city of people at all different income levels, all backgrounds. That is what you want a city to feel like. If we don't get that right, you only have the other two options, which is you end up becoming a city that has carved out the soul of its workforce, who all live 50 miles outside of the city and commute in, or you have a city where businesses don't want to come anymore. I think Denver can be the first city, if we get ahead of this, to say, this is the best place to start a business, to be a teacher, to raise a family, and to be able to live, work, and play. And that is fundamentally around solving the challenge of affordability. I think the housing crisis is the secret to unlocking economic growth and accessibility in Denver. If we get that right, everything else follows. And so this is why we are so all in on believing that actually housing is the central driver to making this the best city to live in. But we think there's a path to do that, which would make this a legacy we believe we'd be incredibly proud of, as the first city to say you can be both an economic engine and affordable, and then let the rest of the cities try to follow.
It's an incredible vision. And I mean, unlike your cabinet members, I actually get to live in the city, and I'm actually proud to live in a city with your leadership, with that vision. Thank you. And thank you again in the midst of your incredibly busy schedule for taking 30 minutes and speaking at the summit. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Howard. I just want to say thank you all for building and partnering and committing your time and resources to help grow the city, because you're the ones that are building it every day. You are the ones that are making it vibrant, making it joyful, making it accessible. I'll say finally, our job is we need to be a good partner to you. And so I think, and sometimes it has not felt that way in the past. When I worked with Santhosh at Gary, we ran a foundation, and our only job was literally to spend millions of dollars to help people. And it's still, I would show up at the city often and feel like it was very, very hard for me to show up and just give people free things. And I was like, wow, if I'm coming up and offering you stuff for free, how hard it would be if I actually needed something from you. And so we would like to reverse that sentiment, which is your feeling that we are an open door, we are a partner. The things that you want to get done, we want to help you get done. And if we're not doing that, let me know, because we will fix it. But we want this to be a place that you love coming to work every day, because I certainly love it and want you to feel the same way about our city. So thank you so much for having me.
As an organization that's been really focused on construction efficiencies, sticks, bricks, and process, it's kind of fantastic the last 2 days that we've been able to bring policymakers in at this level. So if we can get one more round of applause for their contributions to what we're doing.